She stood up, raised her glass, and said it loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear, "To freedom." Then, with a smirk that could slice through steel, my wife pulled off her wedding ring and let it roll across the table like a coin of victory. People laughed. Some clapped. And me? I just watched in silence. Everyone thought I was humiliated. They thought I'd sit there, crushed, while she basked in the glow of her little rebellion. But the truth was, that was the moment everything changed. She thought she'd embarrassed me. She had no idea what was coming. Hey, before I continue, make sure to subscribe, like, and drop a comment. Because what happened next, you won't believe it was the annual dinner for my law firm. A fancy steakhouse downtown, soft jazz in the background, expensive wine, everyone dressed to impress. The kind of night where reputations mattered. My wife, Melissa, loved those events. She thrived on attention, always wanted to be the star of the evening. And she was beautiful, no denying that. But over the years, her charm turned sharp, cutting, unpredictable. That night she wore a red dress that demanded eyes. She'd spent 2 hours getting ready, humming to herself like she was about to perform on stage. We'd barely sat down before she started her act, teasing me in front of my colleagues, making jokes about how married life kills excitement. Laughter scattered around the table, but it wasn't the friendly kind. It was awkward, forced. I could see the discomfort in their faces, the way they looked at me to see if I'd laugh too. I didn't. I smiled politely and poured her another glass of wine. She leaned back, eyes gleaming, and said, "Maybe I should just start over. Maybe being single again wouldn't be the worst thing in the world." That's when she pulled the ring off and held it up. "Look," she said, her voice dripping with mock drama. "The weight's off already." The room went silent for a beat. Then someone, I think it was my junior associate, tried to laugh it off. Melissa thrived on that silence. She wanted it. She wanted to humiliate me, to test how far she could go before I'd break. That I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I just watched her with the calm of a man who'd already made peace with something. That scared her, though she didn't show it yet. She dropped the ring into her purse, lifted her glass again, and toasted to new beginnings. The rest of the evening was a blur of small talk and long silences. She flirted with my coworker, a young guy named Brad, laughing too loud, touching his arm. Everyone pretended not to notice, but the tension was thick enough to choke on. My boss, Mr. Peterson, gave me a sympathetic look across the table, the kind of look that says, "I'm sorry you have to deal with this, man." I just nodded. When dessert came, she leaned over and whispered, "Don't look so serious, Tom. It's a joke." A joke. That's what she called it. But I saw what it really was, a test of power. She'd grown used to pushing me in public, seeing how much I'd take. And every time I stayed quiet, she pushed harder. So I smiled. I told her, "Then let's make it fun." She blinked, surprised by the tone. "What do you mean?" she asked. I leaned closer and said, "You'll see." She laughed, brushing it off like I was finally playing along. But something in my voice made her hesitate. I watched her eyes flicker with that brief, instinctive fear people feel when they realize they've crossed a line they can't uncross. That I spent the rest of the night being polite, charming even. I thanked the host, shook hands, paid the bill. But inside, I was ice cold. Every detail of her performance, every word, every look, I stored it away, not out of anger, but precision. Because if Melissa wanted to act single, I was about to show her what single really looked like. When we got home, she tried to smooth things over. "You know, I was just having fun," she said, stepping out of her heels. I didn't answer. I just went to the office, opened my laptop, and began typing an email. Her laugh echoed down the hall, uncertain, a little too forced this time. She had no idea that her little game had just triggered the end of everything she thought she controlled. The next morning, she was all sweetness and small talk, pretending nothing had happened. She brewed coffee, hummed, even kissed my cheek before heading to her yoga class, the same one she'd been staying late at for weeks. I watched her leave and felt a strange calm settle over me. That email I'd written the night before had gone out to a private investigator I'd used years ago for a corporate case. His reply was short and professional. Consider it done. I'd asked him to follow her, discreetly, for 2 weeks. I didn't expect miracles, but something deep inside told me this wasn't just about a ring at dinner. It was about patterns, secrets, the things she thought she could keep hidden behind laughter. At work, nobody said much about the previous night, though I could feel the undercurrent of whispers. When I passed by the break room, voices went quiet. Mr. Peterson stopped by my office, closed the door, and said, "For what it's worth, you handled yourself like a gentleman." Not many would have. I thanked him. That simple sentence told me how bad it had looked. That night, when I got home, Melissa was already there, glass of wine in hand, wearing that easy smile she always used when she wanted to reset the story. "Rough day?" she asked. "Not really," I said, hanging up my jacket. She watched me closely. "You're quiet. Still mad about last night?" I turned toward her slowly. "I'm not mad," I said. "I'm just learning." She laughed nervously. "Learning what?" "How people show you who they really are when they think no one's keeping score." She tilted her head, confused, maybe even a little scared. "Tom, are you threatening me?" "No," I said softly. "I'm just listening more carefully." That shut her up for the night. Over the next few days, she overcompensated. Cooked dinner, called me at lunch, texted photos of sunsets with captions like, "Thinking of you." It would have fooled anyone who didn't know what to look for. But I'd already stopped looking at the surface. I was waiting for the moment the truth would trip over its own arrogance. On Thursday evening, the investigator called. "You might want to sit down," he said. I did. He told me about a man named Kevin, a fitness instructor at her studio. Late dinners after class, weekend meetings, hotel receipts. Photos followed in an encrypted folder. I opened them and felt nothing. No rage, no shock. Just confirmation. She'd been acting single for longer than I'd realized. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd humiliated me in public because she thought she still had control, not knowing she'd already lost it months before. I didn't confront her that night. I waited until Saturday, when she suggested we go to her friend Jenna's birthday dinner. I agreed. I wanted an audience, just like she'd wanted one. The restaurant was packed, laughter bouncing off the walls, the smell of garlic and wine heavy in the air. Melissa was glowing, playing the perfect wife now, holding my arm, whispering compliments, pretending we were the picture of stability. Halfway through dinner, Jenna joked, "Melissa, don't lose that ring again." Everyone laughed. Melissa rolled her eyes. "Don't remind me," she said, smiling toward me. "He's never going to let that go." I raised my glass. "Actually," I said calmly, "I did let it go. Completely." The table went quiet, the kind of silence that swells right before a storm. Melissa frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" I leaned back, still holding my glass. "It means I finally took your advice." "My advice?" "You told me to lighten up. Have fun." So I did. I reached into my jacket and slid my phone across the table. The photo on the screen stopped every conversation cold. Melissa's face drained of color as she stared at the image. Her and Kevin, arm in arm, leaving a hotel. Jenna gasped. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Melissa looked at me, eyes wide, trembling. "Tom, please, not here." "Why not?" I said. "You didn't care about audiences before." She reached for the phone, but I pulled it back. "I told you once that actions have consequences." You laughed. "Now everyone gets to see what consequence looks like." Her voice cracked. "You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You were just acting single, remember?" She froze, her lips parting, but no sound came out. Around us, the table shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke. I stood, slipped my phone back into my pocket, and placed a folded envelope beside her plate. "Inside are copies of everything I'll be sending to my attorney Monday morning," I said quietly. "You might want to start packing." Then I walked out. leaving her surrounded by the silence she'd once used as her stage. Outside, the air was sharp and cold. I took a deep breath, feeling something I hadn't felt in years: peace. I wasn't thinking about revenge anymore. This wasn't about getting even. It was about getting free. That night, as I drove away, I didn't look back once. I didn't need to. The show was over. But what came next would make her realize that losing me wasn't her punishment. It was her education. I didn't hear from her for 3 days after that dinner. Not a call, not a text, nothing. I figured she was still in shock, probably spinning her own version of the story to whoever would listen. I imagined her crying to her friends, claiming it was a misunderstanding, that I'd set her up. But I knew Melissa too well. When she went quiet, it wasn't guilt. It was strategy. So when she finally showed up at my office lobby Wednesday afternoon, I wasn't surprised. She looked flawless, of course. Hair perfect, makeup subtle, outfit chosen for sympathy. She walked up to the reception desk, ignoring the curious eyes around her, and said, "Tell him his wife needs 5 minutes." The receptionist looked at me nervously through the glass wall of my office. I nodded. "Send her in." She entered like she owned the place, but I could see the tremor in her hands. "Tom," she started, voice soft, "please. We need to talk privately." I gestured toward the chair across from my desk. "We are private. Go ahead." She hesitated, then sat down. "You humiliated me," she said finally. I almost laughed. "You humiliated yourself, Melissa. I just stopped covering for you." Her jaw tightened. It wasn't what it looked like. "Kevin and I." "Stop," I said quietly. "I've seen the photos, the hotel receipts, the messages. Don't insult me with excuses." She looked down, then back up, eyes glassy. "I made a mistake. I just wanted to feel wanted again. You've been so distant." "So you solved that by pretending you were single?" I asked. "By dragging my reputation through mud in front of people I work with?" She pressed her lips together. "I didn't mean for it to go that far." "But it did," I said. "And now, there's no going back." She leaned forward, desperate. "We can fix this. We can go to therapy. We can start over." I shook my head slowly. "Melissa, I'm not angry anymore. That's the part you don't understand. I'm done." She stared at me for a long time, her expression hardening as the act slipped away. "You think you're going to come out of this looking like the victim?" she said bitterly. "You think people won't see what you did as revenge?" "They can think whatever they want," I said. "But I'll still sleep fine." She stood up abruptly, eyes flashing. "You'll regret this, Tom." I smiled faintly. "I already regret staying this long." She stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to make the glass shake. My assistant poked her head in. "You okay?" she asked carefully. "Better than I've been in years," I said. That night, I forwarded all the documentation to my lawyer: photos, texts, time-stamped reports. The next morning, he filed for divorce on grounds of adultery and emotional cruelty. By Friday, she'd been served at her gym, right in the middle of her morning class. Poetic, I thought. The call started immediately after that. First came the tears. "Please, can we just talk?" Then the bargaining. "Let's take a break instead of divorcing." Finally, the anger. "You're ruining my life." Each message more frantic than the last. I didn't reply to any of them. By Monday, my lawyer called. "She hired representation," he said. "They're pushing for mediation instead of court." "Fine," I said. "Set it up." The mediation was scheduled for the following week at a downtown office building, neutral ground. When I arrived, she was already there, looking smaller somehow. Her lawyer, a thin man with a slick smile, greeted me like we were about to discuss a real estate deal. "We're hoping to reach a civil agreement," he said. "Melissa regrets her actions and wants to resolve things quickly." I nodded. "So do I." We went over finances. The house was mine before marriage, paid off, title in my name only. My retirement accounts were protected by prenup. Her lawyer's confidence faded with every document my attorney presented. "You really left her with nothing," he muttered under his breath. I didn't answer. Melissa kept her eyes on the table, twisting a tissue in her hands. When it was over, her lawyer asked for a brief recess. Outside the conference room, she caught my arm. Tom, please. I can't afford to live anywhere decent. I'll do anything to make this easier. I looked at her for a long moment, searching for even a shred of the woman I used to know. But all I saw was someone who only felt sorry because she'd lost control. You already made it easier, I said. You told me who you really are. I walked away before she could answer. That night, I packed what was left of my things from the house and left the keys on the counter. The rooms looked hollow, stripped of warmth, but I didn't feel loss, just release. I checked into a small apartment downtown. Bare walls, simple furniture, quiet. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. Over the next few days, word spread through the firm. People tried not to mention it, but I could feel the subtle shift in how they looked at me. There was respect now, a kind of quiet admiration. They'd seen me stay composed when most men would have exploded. My boss called me in one afternoon. Tom, we're restructuring leadership next quarter, he said. I want you on the short list for partner. I nodded, keeping my tone calm. But inside, something long dormant stirred, a sense of pride I hadn't felt in years. The same week, an unexpected message appeared in my inbox. It was from Rachel, one of my colleagues. She'd been at that dinner, one of the few who hadn't looked away when everything blew up. If you ever need someone to talk to over coffee, she wrote, I'm around. I hesitated for a long time before replying. Then I typed, coffee sounds good. When we met that Saturday, it wasn't romantic. Just two people talking, laughing, sharing stories about bad marriages and worse mistakes. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. No eggshells, no hidden traps. Just honesty. And maybe that was the first real step toward something new. Meanwhile, Melissa was unraveling. Her gym fired her after clients complained about her behavior. Friends stopped returning calls. She sent one last text that read, You've destroyed me. I didn't reply, because the truth was, she destroyed herself long before I ever stood up from that table. Weeks turned into months, and life started to feel almost unfamiliar in its calm. My mornings were quiet, just black coffee and sunlight cutting through the blinds. No arguments, no slammed doors, no walking on eggshells before work. It was strange how peace could feel like a luxury after years of chaos. My lawyer finalized the divorce papers in late spring. I signed them without hesitation. When the courier delivered Melissa's copy, she tried calling again, but I let it ring. That chapter had already closed. The court date came and went quickly. The judge barely looked up as he signed the decree, one stroke of a pen ending nearly 9 years of marriage. I thought I'd feel grief, maybe nostalgia, but what I felt was clean, like exhaling after holding my breath too long. That night, I walked the city streets with no destination, just taking in the noise, the freedom, the space that belonged entirely to me again. I hadn't realized how much of myself I'd given away piece by piece until there was nothing left to give. Around that time, Rachel and I started spending more time together. It began with simple things, coffee after work, helping each other with projects, dinners that stretched longer than we meant them to. There was no rush, no pretense. She listened, really listened. She'd been divorced too, years earlier, and understood that kind of quiet loneliness people carry even after the papers are signed. She didn't fill silence with noise. She made it comfortable. One evening, after we'd finished dinner at a small Italian place downtown, she asked, Do you ever miss her? I thought about it honestly before answering. I missed the idea of her, the version I thought existed. But the person I married disappeared a long time ago. She nodded, not judging, not pitying, just understanding. A few weeks later, my promotion became official. Partner. A corner office, new responsibilities, more travel. I'd spent years buried under someone else's moods, and now I was finally stepping into my own. The partners' dinner was held at the same restaurant where everything had fallen apart months earlier. Walking into that place again was surreal. Same tables, same jazz music, but a different me. I wasn't the quiet man sitting in humiliation anymore. I was the one people looked at with respect, not pity. Rachel was my guest that night. She looked elegant but understated, the opposite of Melissa's dramatic style. When we walked in together, heads turned, whispers followed. I didn't care. During dessert, my boss leaned over and said quietly, "You've come a long way, Tom. I'm proud of how you handled everything." I thanked him. Across the room, I caught sight of a familiar face. Melissa. She was sitting at the bar alone, staring into a glass of wine. Her hair was shorter, her face thinner. She looked older somehow, not in years, but in spirit. For a second, our eyes met. She froze, then offered a small, uncertain smile. I nodded politely, nothing more. She got up and walked toward me. Rachel noticed, but didn't move, just gave me a reassuring glance. Melissa stopped a few feet away. "Tom," she said softly, "you look good." "Thanks," I replied evenly. "You too." She hesitated, her eyes darting to Rachel, then back to me. "I heard about your promotion. Congratulations." "Appreciate it." She nodded, shifting awkwardly. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything." I didn't understand what I was throwing away until it was gone. There was no bitterness in her tone, just exhaustion. I studied her for a moment. The woman who once thrived on attention now couldn't hold eye contact for more than a few seconds. "I hope you're doing better," I said. "I am actually. Therapy's been helping. I'm working part-time at a small agency downtown. Nothing fancy, but it's something." "Good," I said sincerely. "That's good." She took a breath, like she wanted to say more, but then she saw Rachel watching and decided against it. "Well," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I'm glad you're happy." "Really?" "Thank you," I said. "I am." She nodded once, gave a faint smile, and walked out. I watched her go without feeling anger or triumph, just finality. Rachel touched my arm gently. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "More than okay." When we left later that night, the city lights reflected off the wet pavement, painting everything gold. As we walked to the car, Rachel slipped her hand into mine. It felt natural, easy, unforced. No games, no tension, just quiet connection. For the first time, I realized happiness doesn't come from proving someone wrong. It comes from finally understanding what's right for you. A few months later, I ran into Melissa again at the grocery store. She was with a man about her age, laughing quietly as they compared wine bottles. When she saw me, she smiled, not the fake kind she used to perform with, but a genuine one. I smiled back, gave a small nod, and moved on. That was closure, real closure. Life settled into something steady after that. Work was fulfilling. Rachel and I kept things simple, honest. Some evenings we'd sit on my balcony, watching the sunset over the city, saying nothing at all. She'd rest her head on my shoulder, and I'd think about how rare it is to find peace after chaos, how hard it is to rebuild without bitterness. But I had done it, one quiet decision at a time. Sometimes I still think back to that night, when Melissa slid off her ring and everyone laughed. They thought I was broken. But that was the moment I began to wake up. I learned that silence isn't weakness. It's power waiting for its moment. And when you finally stop trying to fix people who don't want to be fixed, life gives you back everything you thought you'd lost. So if you're still watching this, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and share your thoughts. Because sometimes, the stories that start with heartbreak end with something far more valuable: freedom.